So we're talking about landscape in art, and in particular, we're looking at ideas of landscape, nature, and wildness. And what might seem to be very simplistic interpretation of those words. We all feel like we know what nature is. We all feel like we know what wildness is. And theorists, writers have cast doubt on the simplistic meaning of those words and actually tried to discuss them as something quite contradictory. So the Industrial Revolution happened, and that radically changed the way that people lived with, worked with, looked at, and understood nature and the environment and the countryside. And it sparked off the Romantic and the Sublime movement. And it fundamentally changed the way we understand nature and landscape. And it had a huge impact in art and landscape in art. Uh, but we're going to talk about a new context. We're moving on from the Industrial Revolution and we're jumping right up to the 1970s. Okay, so we're in the 1970s now. And I want to talk about a fundamental shift in the way we understood landscape, and it came from one single exhibition, which was held in New York in 1975, and it was a photography exhibition. The exhibition was called New Topographics, Photographs of a Man-Altered Landscape. You can do some research into this exhibition, but it's been incredibly influential in particular for photographers, but also just in for artists in the way we look at the natural and the urban world around us. So what we have here is a landscape photograph, and it follows some of the formulas for a successful landscape image. One, we've got the rule of thirds. So we've got the horizon line, which is one third, roughly one third up. And that was a device that was used by a lot of landscape painters in the Romantic and the Sublime movement because it emphasizes the sky, this sort of vast sky above us, and it makes us feel quite small in the landscape. So it was a device used a lot by Sublime painters to emphasize the weight of nature on us and above us. But here the subject matter is quite different because we have this housing estate, this vast housing estate in America, Colorado in this instance. And we have houses and cars and streets. Another very everyday, humdrum, banal image, but that still has these undercurrents of greatness, of vastness, of and of grace. It's got a sort of well manicured grace about it, especially if you can imagine it's a very large scale print on a wall, which would have been in a very beautiful frame, very simplistic, modern, beautiful frame. So it's got that power, it's got that sort of beauty, but it's also very banal, it's very humdrum, and it's also quite critical. It's not an altogether positive image, it's somewhat negative. Let's talk about what they were trying to do. The new topographics were a profoundly different approach to making. Instead of using their landscapes to portray a sort of sense of sentimentality or awe or sort of overwhelming beauty or fear. Their subject matter was very mundane. It was very everyday. It had a lot of everydayness in it. A lot of it was also quite desolate, even though they were of urban, man-made landscapes. The presence of man was very minimal. You didn't see a lot of people in the picture, so it's quite desolate feeling. So why would the new topographics use this humdrum, banal, vacant aesthetic? Well, there's a nice quote here from a book by Alison Briley, which is called The Uses of Landscape, the Picturesque Aesthetic, and the National Park System. And she says, early tourists' enjoyment of landscape was based less on an appreciation of nature itself than on the secondary image of nature that they themselves constructed, either literally through their amateur sketches or imaginatively, simply in the way that they viewed the scenery. Alison is talking about landscape before the new topographics. And she was saying that people went into, say, the Lake District, for example, and they wouldn't really be enjoying nature itself. They would be enjoying the secondary image of that nature, which was they would be enjoying the view of the Lake District through what they already had seen of postcard images of the Lake District, or through secondary images seen on chocolate box tins or on greetings cards, for example. So they're not having a direct enjoyment of the landscape. They're seeing it through another secondary image. Oh, doesn't that just look like a beautiful artwork? I can enjoy that because I'm seeing it through that secondary image. And the new topographics would agree with this and say, well, I want you to engage with the reality, the gritty reality of the urban and natural environment around you. And that's why they used this aesthetic to contradict the idealization of nature, which was encouraging a less direct way of engaging with nature.